Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran, and today we're going to be taking a look at the thing that probably is most out of place in the Fallout 4 universe. This is the crashed UFO landing in Fallout 4, and more importantly, we're going to be breaking down just what happens when you see a UFO in the real world. That's right. This year, the Pentagon has released a report with over 400 pilot accounts of UFO activity. What do they mean? We're going to find out. Let's go.
Here's something? What was that? Sometimes, as you wander the wasteland, you'll see what appears to be a flying saucer sail through the air.
Now, as you guys know, from previous Fallout games, right? There's a Fallout DLC that entirely involves going up into space, being abducted by aliens, having to fight your way out. What I will say is that a lot of this is a reference to the 1950s. And this is, of course, when the heyday of sort of the golden era of alien invasion movies. Now, one of the things that's fascinating is that there's often a connection between real cultural fears and their manifestation as popular movies, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, look at, for example, the horror movie series The Purge. You notice that they have had like 4 sequels, but they focus on vast wealth inequality and the sort of dangers posed to a society where the haves and have-nots separate further and further. You have a lot of horror that's based around America's history with race and racism, right? So every sort of, when you look at horror movies, you can usually trace them back to something real in that cultural milieu. What is the cultural milieu of the 1950s that spawned space aliens? Well, the answer is the Cold War, and specifically, I argue, the rapid development of the Soviets. What happened? Well, remember, in the 1950s, the Soviet Union, with no warning, launched Sputnik. Sputnik was the first artificial satellite placed into orbit, and all Sputnik did was run off a battery, orbit the Earth, and broadcast a simple signal that could be detected. In fact, it wasn't encrypted or anything. Anyone could tune in their radio and listen to Sputnik. And to the United States, that was terrifying. They could look up into the skies and see their rival nation, the communist nation of the Soviet Union, had a vehicle in the skies right over their own country. And the truth is, the US at that time could not do it. They couldn't have put a satellite into orbit if they wanted to. Their space program was nascent. They had only developed a nuclear weapon only about a decade prior, and that had to be dropped out of a propeller-driven aircraft. So it was really scary to Americans, this idea that there was a different people with a totally different means of organizing themselves, a totally different government, and that they possessed superior technology that America could not match. And so it created a lot of fear. What unknown technologies would the Soviets debut next year, in the next decade, in the next 50 years? Right? And so those fears manifested as classic science fiction. The idea of hostile aliens sporting unknown, superior technology, imposing their will and strange way of life on the United States. So that is the origin of this classic Fallout-style 50s alien spaceship.
And then you hear a loud crash. If you follow the trail of smoke, you eventually find your way to the area around Oberland Station. Due west of Oberland Station is Relay Tower 1DL 109. If you extend the satellite dishes on this relay tower, you pick up a garbled radio beacon.
I mean, I love some of these very elaborate quests. These just seem so much fun. I played Fallout 4 I sort of enjoyed it, but I found that it was just too buggy to be really playable, which is shocking given that it's a 6-year-old game.
To get closer to the source of the beacon, it gets much more clear, and it sounds like someone is speaking in an alien language. If you follow the smoke in the radio beacon correctly, eventually you'll find trees on fire, and you'll see a pillar of smoke in the distance. Here you find a crashed alien spaceship. It hit the ground and left a huge scar.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, okay. I'm not sure this would be, well, I don't know. Would it be realistic for a ship to bury itself like that? I don't know.
Like the fake alien ship that the Hubologists use in Nuka World, this one doesn't have a door that you can easily access. But if you look closely, you do see what appears to be a puddle of green blood near the crash site. Whatever creature was injured left a trail of green blood that you can follow. Following the trail eventually leads you to a darkened cave.
Ooh, extra spooky. Guys, if pilots are down in the real world, yes, it is definitely true that you want to try to survive. Usually there's a process. So it depends on the circumstance, right? If a pilot ejects, they may not be able to find their aircraft, and usually they will not be heading to the aircraft if they can avoid it. Again, it depends on a whole host of factors, including enemy activity in the area, likelihood of recovery, how proximate they are to friendly forces, and a host of other things. So usually a pilot will not count on having their aircraft available. That's why a lot of their emergency kit is actually in the seat itself, in the ejection seat. This can include, of course, their personal defense weapon, emergency rations, etc., etc. So, but they will eject, they will land, and then they will have to survive, evade, and if necessary, resist and escape capture. How do we do that? Well, we know that we need to set priorities in any survival situation. And those are, first off, is treating immediate medical issues, immediate medical illnesses. So what actually may happen is that in a human being, if we were actively bleeding, instead, especially at that level, you would want to treat the bleeding first and foremost. So you'd want to, again, use your bandage, wrap yourself up, try to stop that bleeding. Then you need to get yourself, your next priority is food, or your next priority is honestly shelter, right? Because shelter in a cold night or in the rain, you can die of exposure in just one night. So it makes perfect sense that this alien is going to make a beeline for a cave, which is can be a very, very excellent shelter. Then your priority is going to be water, potable water. Then it's going to be food, right? Because you can go 72 hours without water, and you can go about 3 weeks without food. That's usually the rule of thumb in survival. 3 minutes without oxygen, if you're drowning or something. They say 3 hours. It's like 30 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So this alien is setting their priorities exactly correctly.
Inside the cave, you come face to face with the voice on the distress call, none other than a little green man. He's instantly hostile and begins to attack you.
The irony is, of course, when Russia invaded Crimea, their unmarked military personnel, right, who were wearing Russian uniforms but carried no insignia, were referred to as little green men. Which is ironic, of course, because the little green men is also the stereotype of sort of the faceless communist threat of the U.S. of the 1950s. This, the Soviet style of communism emphasized sameness and interchangeability. And so there was a real fear that sort of the communist culture would dominate the world, dominate the United States, and that they would impose their same, lack of individuality onto the US.
You have no choice but
Of course, some of this is just sort of othering, right? Someone who's different from you, a different culture, you go, oh, they're all sort of the same, right? And you go, oh, well, in my culture, there's a lot of nuance. Well, it's just because you know it better.
to defend yourself. On the body of the alien, you find an alien blaster pistol and a random number of alien blaster rounds. These are the only alien blaster rounds that you can find in the game, so once you run out of these, you're out forever. On the floor, you see the ham radio that the alien was using to radio for help. I guess we can assume from this that this alien has friends in the vicinity. Of course, you know this already.
So what's interesting is, I mean, he's really got some destroy all humans vibe here, but let's see what he had in terms of survival. Well, it's tough to know, right? Because obviously we don't know what an alien needs to survive, but he definitely appears to have some sort of pack, some sort of backpack and an environmental suit. So he's prepared to breathe. Right, so we solved that problem. He's in shelter. He also, you notice, found a bottle back there, right, with some, well, probably nothing in it if we're honest here. But nonetheless, he had a container to store water, which if you, again, have ever been hiking, you know that's actually sometimes a tremendous problem, is having a safe place so you can securely store clean water. Again, do the aliens need water? I don't know, but maybe there's emergency rations and stuff like that in his little jetpack.
This alien has friends in the vicinity. Of course, you know this already if you played Fallout 3. One of the DLCs for Fallout 3 is Mothership Zeta, where you actually get abducted by aliens and you have to fight your way off of the
Fallout physics we're used to.
ship. In fact, the language used in the Garbled distress call is the exact same language used in Mothership Zeta. So we know that this is the same species of alien. Additionally, one of the loading screens tells us that this species of alien life is called the Zetan, which of course is a reference to Scientology, which believes that a Thetan is some sort of human spirit or soul. You can take the alien blaster back to a weapon.
Gotta love Scientology. Ironically written by a 1950s sci-fi author. Posited, I guess, by 1950. It's hard to credibly give Scientology the light of day. They seem just like the sort of horrible organization that, well, rich assholes are going to gravitate to, right? Once you achieve a certain level of wealth, especially for some reason, if you're a Hollywood level actor, there's something about the fact that to achieve great success in Hollywood requires hard work, but guess what? There are hundreds of thousands of hardworking, aspiring actors and actresses in Hollywood. So the fact that you become the 1% that make it to the top is just basically luck. It's luck. You're not better than anybody else. You just happen to have get cast for the right role at the right time. And, you know, obviously if you don't work hard, you won't succeed. But then those people, when they get their hundreds of millions of dollars, they really think they're intrinsically better, that they didn't just get purely lucky. And once you think you're better than everybody else, then you're prone to adopting fringe beliefs. Because, of course, if you think you're better than everyone else, then believing the things that everyone else believes is not possible, right? If you're smarter than everyone else, you should have beliefs that are different from everyone else. This is their internal logic. It's not actually true. Lots of actually smart people believe lots and lots of conventional things because they are able to look at the evidence, and the consensus is sometimes the consensus for a reason, right? Nobody's too smart to go against the consensus on showering or brushing your teeth, right? We don't question those consensus because the evidence is great. They prevent disease and you don't smell bad.
Bench and upgrade it. There are a number of different upgrades. You can keep it a pistol, or you can equip a long barrel and a sharpshooter's grip to turn it into a sniper rifle. It even comes with a night vision scope. And if you ever run out of the standard alien blaster rounds, you can upgrade the magazine to accept fusion cells. This reduces the damage, and even though it says it reduces the ammo capacity, it actually doesn't. It increases ammo capacity. Speaking about ammo capacity, the default ammo capacity is 42. Yes, that's right, that's a reference to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the answer to life and existence and everything is 42.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, Paul, this doesn't make a lot of sense, right? This is an alien technology. How are you able to upgrade it? But the truth is that there's a lot of instances throughout history where unknown technology is taken and used in sometimes rudimentary fashions by societies that don't fully understand why or how it works. In fact, for most of history, right, technology was sort of ritualized. And I don't mean this in a sort of patronizing way. I mean, there would be a great understanding of how something works. It just wasn't understood why. For example, people were able to refine and ferment whiskeys, liquors, and other alcoholic beverages, despite the fact there was no germ theory. No one understood what microorganisms were. So then how can you perform a high-level fermentation process while you don't understand what bacteria are? Well, the answer is you don't need to know what bacteria are to go through the process of fermentation. Just similarly, you may not need to know how exactly the alien technology works. You just need to know that it does, and you can make upgrades if you say, hey, listen, this is the base process. And again, this is a society that has mastered fusion, so it's reasonable to say that you can probably acquire a very good understanding of what this technology holds without necessarily understanding the entirety of the alien technology, especially because at its core, the alien technology is still subject to physics, and this isn't the only laser weapon in the game, so you can imagine that perhaps it's actually not that technologically different from the fusion weapons, laser weapons of the rest of Fallout 4. So it may be something that the engineers, even of this post-apocalyptic society, can get 85, 90% of the way to understanding the fusion weapon, making it easy to make upgrades. Now, why they would keep the same aesthetic, I don't know. Who doesn't love a good-looking laser pistol? What's more interesting is that you wonder if this alien society, because they are obviously able to be killed relatively easily, shot down relatively easily by the human beings of the Fallout universe, if in fact the alien life forms are not that far ahead in terms of maybe arms development than the world of Fallout. It would make sense. Lots of societies that didn't meet, that were separated right before sort of globalization, would develop in different ways. The most famous that I can think of is, of course, the Aztec society, right? When they met the Spanish for the first time. While the Spanish certainly had superiority in weapons and seafaring technology and navigation, the Aztecs had a really complex understanding of sanitation. Then their cities and much of their architecture, their irrigation, they had running water plumbing. They were much, much cleaner and were able to get larger cities than, they were able to get cities on par with European cities despite not even having the wheel. And that's in large part because I think they had a superior system of sanitation. So while the Aztecs were the superior in terms of sanitation, and urban development, we'll say, the Spanish were superior in terms of weapons. And unfortunately, as we've seen here, superiority in weapons is often decisive in conflicts, right? The winner isn't necessarily the smarter or better society, whatever that would mean. Instead, it's just the one that's better at organizing itself for violence.
The weapon is nice. It's not quite as nice as Hub's alien blaster. That weapon has the lucky weapon augmentation and hits a little harder than the alien blaster. But considering you can get this very early in the game, it's an excellent weapon for a gunslinger in particular, and for a character who depends upon VATS. Now, this is a random encounter. I got really lucky. In 3 of the 4 games that I've played, I never found the alien. The spaceship never appeared over me. Even when I went to the crash site, there was nothing there.
That's sort of an interesting take on replayability. And it would be pretty fascinating to have a buddy who's playing Fallout 4 and tells you, wow, I just had the alien encounter, and you literally never encounter an alien throughout the entire game.
There was no radio distress call to follow. He just never appeared in my game. But while shooting footage for another video, I loaded an old save, and I just so happened to trigger the random encounter just as I logged in. This allowed me to find out from which direction the ship was coming and actually record footage of the ship crash landing. So I'm pretty excited about that. I sadly didn't have any companions with me when this random encounter triggered, but every companion except for Dogmeat is programmed to say something when the spaceship lands. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thought I would shoot this quick video since this random event just happened to me and it was a whole lot of fun.
Yep, that is pretty cool. I do love that aspect of some of these Fallout games where there's truly just random events that happen on playthroughs. The different endings, different quests. It's a great structure, and it's a great sort of refreshing look relative to the sort of multiplayer first games. But let's talk about the more important thing. Real aliens. Are there real aliens? Well, it seems like that may be the case. As you can see here, Pentagon said there's about 400 UFO encounters. But here's the thing. As this article talks about, it's a little bit of a false positive. Yes, there are lots of objects that pilots see that they go, hey, we can't identify this. And it's really important, actually, for pilots and the Navy and Air Force to understand what happens when sensors fail. And here's what I mean, right? There are lots of unknown flying objects. Now, the fact that in, again, the 50s and 60s, people decided that flying objects were synonymous with alien spaceships, flying saucers, meant that a lot of pilots weren't willing to report that they saw something that they don't know what it is. But here's the reality. What is more likely? That your sensors are having some sort of error. They're detecting a known aircraft in a way that isn't clear. You are encountering an aircraft that, for one reason or another, is performing or operating in ways that you don't understand, and it's from a foreign power, another, a rival nation, or that it's literally aliens from outer space who are just trolling. Right? It doesn't make any sense that aliens with their ultra superior technology would fly right on top, functionally, in terms of the vastness of space, there would be flying right on top of U.S. military aircraft. Why would they need to do that? Our own technology in the present is able to spy on aircraft from orbit in satellites. So why the aliens would need to fly next to an F-16 makes no sense, right? There's no reason to think that any of these UFOs are extraterrestrial. As they point out, there was a encounter with a series of pyramid-shaped objects, and it really confused the pilot, and it confused a number of other people that watched the videos. So, right, it talks about in July 2019, and there was actually footage. And the investigators originally said this was an unknown flying object. So this was a true UFO. But then they saw another similar incident off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. And that they realized is that one of the Navy's drones, they don't specify which one, so it may be something still being tested, but The triangular appearance is the result of light passing through night vision goggles and then being recorded by an SLR camera. That's it. That is the explanation for the mysterious pyramid-shaped drones. It's just a quirk of night vision goggles and then SLR camera recording. But it's important to understand that, because what you don't want is to have, for example, a friendly drone misidentified as a threat. So you want to make sure you understand why your sensors are behaving the way they are. All that to say, it's not indicative of extraterrestrials. The reports say, the Pentagon says, listen, we've never seen anything to indicate that extraterrestrials are involved. And it makes perfect sense. If you had the technology to travel for light years and light years and light years across space and time, your technology would let you observe our activities from very far away, or with extremely small technologies, right? Your flying objects might be about this big, right? You wouldn't need to have a human-sized aircraft. Again, this is sort of a throwback to the old days when the fears were of mysterious, ultra-powerful Soviet-style aircraft. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Do hit subscribe. I really have this dream of getting to 100K, and we're pretty close. We're at like 60. Also, if you want some reactions to things that are a little edgier than YouTube will let me have, you want to become a member of Patreon. Thanks so much to my Lieutenant Tier patrons. I'll see you guys in the next one.